Ready? You can please start.
Om,
Hare Krishna.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Nasta Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhavati Uttama Bhakti Bhavati Anaishtake. Hare Krishna to all the assembled devotees. Today we'll be reading from Canto 7, Chapter 10, starting with text 41, translation. Everything you ask me about how Shishupala and others attained salvation, although they were inimical, has now been explained to you by me. Text 42. In this narration about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, various expansions or incarnations of the Lord have been described, and the killing of the two demons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, has also been described. Text 43 to 44. This narration describes the characteristics of the great and exalted devotee Prahlad Maharaj, his staunch devotional service, his perfect knowledge, and his perfect detachment from material contamination. It also describes the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the cause of creation, maintenance, and annihilation. Prahlad Maharaj, in his prayers, has described the transcendental qualities of the Lord and has also described how the various abodes of the demigods and demons, regardless of how materially opulent, are destroyed by the mere direction of the Lord. Text 45. The principles of religion by which one can actually understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are called Bhagavad Dharma. In this narration, therefore, which deals with these principles, actual transcendence is properly described. Text 46. One who hears and chants this narration about the omnipotence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, is certainly liberated from material bondage without fail. Text 47. Prahlad Maharaj was the best among exalted devotees. Anyone who with great attention hears this narration concerning the activities of Prahlad Maharaj, the killing of Hiranyakashipu, and the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Nrsingadev, surely reaches the spiritual world where there is no anxiety. Text 48. Nadmani continued, My dear Maharaj Yudhisthira, all of you, the Pandavas, are extremely fortunate, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, lives in your palace just like a human being. Great saintly persons know this very well, and therefore they constantly visit this house. Text 49. Translation. The impersonal Brahman is Krishna himself, because Krishna is the source of the impersonal Brahman. He is the origin of the transcendental bliss sought by great saintly persons. Yet he, the Supreme Person, is your most dear friend and constant well-wisher, and is intimately related to you as the son of your maternal uncle. Indeed, he is always like your body and soul. He is worshipable, yet he acts as your servant and sometimes as your spiritual master. Text 50. Exalted persons like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma could not properly describe the truth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. May the Lord, who is always worshipped as the protector of all devotees by great saints who observe vows of silence, meditation, devotional service, and renunciation, be pleased with us. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mahaji. Chaitanya Chandra Prabhuji, please take over the call, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you for sharing the screen.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Devi Shakti Mataji, for reading the translations today. And thank you, dear devotees, for coming this morning to hear something from Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto, Chapter 10, text 41 to 50. I'd like to start by offering my prayers. Om Ajnantimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vacharam panghum langayate girim yadkripatamaham vande Shri Gurudin Taranam. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So today, like I said, we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 10, text 41 to 52. So just to give a brief overview, what's been discussed so far in the previous few sessions, we've seen the conclusion of the Leela of appearance of Sri Narsingadev. How after killing Hiranyakashipu, Narsingadev is offered wonderful prayers by Prahlad Maharaj, and how the other wonderful denizens of the heavenly planets, they come and offer prayers, including starting from Lord Brahma onwards. And then how Nrsimhadev chastises Lord Brahma. And then he goes on to give benedictions to Prahlad Maharaj. And we had heard that wonderfully on Monday. Now, continuing that, there are four major themes that have been discussed in today's section that's described. So, in text 41 to 45 was described as the conclusion of this Leela, of the killing of Hiranyakashipu. This is one of the longest Leelas that are described in Srimad Bhagavatam, almost encompassing about 10 chapters. So this in this particular section 41 to 45, Sri Narad Muni just gives a conclusion to this Leela. What are the main points that we've learned? Text 46 to 47, Sri Narad Muni talks about the Falashruti. What are the benefits of somebody who hears this Leela, and what we can hope to achieve from it? In text 48 to 49, Narad Muni goes on to glorifies the wonderful position of the Pandavas, how exalted devotees they were in response to Yudhishthira Maharaj's lamentation. And in text 50, the last verse for today, we hear a little bit description about Tripurari, a wonderful devotee of Lord Krishna, Sri Shambhu. And we get a segue into the next story that's going to come, where glories of Lord Shiva are going to be described. Beginning from text 41, Narad Muni says that everything you asked me about how Shishupal and others attained salvation, although they were inimical, has now been explained to you by me. So if you remember, originally the story had started when in the court of King Yudhishthir, Shishupal, after having uttered committed 100 offenses, consequently, he was killed by the Sudarshan Chakra of Lord Krishna. And after being delivered, how his the Jivatma merges into the effulgence of Lord Krishna. And Yudhishthira Maharaj was very astonished by this act, and he wanted to understand and hear about it more. And in response to that query, Shri Narad Muni starts explaining this the whole Leela about Narsingadev and Hiranyakashipu, and how anybody who comes in contact with Krishna, either directly or indirectly, is ultimately delivered. This is a wonderful point that we understand here from Sri Narad Muni. Oftentimes, I heard this point from His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj, that whenever we preach, sometimes we preach, we go into different depths, into different layers, but we should realize that when we preach, we should always come back and circle back to the original point that we were making. So it's a good, important point for us to remember as preachers, that we begin at a certain point, but we should also conclude and not leave the the audience hanging about where we started and where we are, where this katha is going. So Sri Narad Muni also describing in very detail the entire Leela in 10 chapters. He's now concluding and saying that this is how, this is the reason why Shishupal and others attained salvation, although they were in Mikkel. And now I have explained this to you in detail. In text 42, Narad Muni also says that not just this particular Leela, but there have been other Leelas also where Krishna has taken avatar and he has killed these two demons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, in other forms, such as he just mentioned about Shishupal and Dantavakra, and then as Ravan and Kumbhakaran, where Sri Lord Ram appears. So he goes on to describe that, I've explained to you one Leela in detail, but there are other Leelas also that shows, how the Lord's touch, his remembrance is so purifying even to the inimical soul. Srila Prabhupada gives a very extensive purport to this to this verse, and I would recommend if devotees have time, they could read the purport to Shloka text 42 today. Srila Prabhupada goes on to describe and lays emphasis on the word avatara. So it says in the third word, avatara katha punya. The Prabhupada describes that avatar, by hearing about avatar, or the appearance of the form of the Lord, one becomes punya, one becomes free of all unfortunate situations, all miseries in life. Now, the question is, what is an avatar? So, avatar, the literal meaning of the word avatar means somebody who descends. So, usually, an avatar means the person or personality doesn't belong to our realm or our world. He's descending, coming to us from a higher world. And when he comes to us from a higher world, that personality, he shows us some of the things, some of the signs, symptoms of things that happen in the other world. Just like sometimes, when we study astronomy, um, we see that a comet is flying past the planet, and a lot of people will take telescopes and they'll gaze at the comet. So when you look at that, and then you realize that, oh, this is not from our world, it's from another world. It's just traveling. And then you see some features of it and you try to derive conclusion. Similarly, when the Lord comes to our world in different forms, as Kulma, Matsya, he may look like he's a part of this world and he's doing things like people or animals would do in this world, but his form and his qualities are always different and not contaminated by the limitations of this world. Um, However, Srila Prabhupada goes on to caution that in this world, there are many people who claim themselves to be avatars. They say that there's avatars of certain of God in a certain form, but the way the avatar is established, Prabhupada emphasizes, is by their description in the scriptures. They should be described in the scriptures, plus they should have certain signs on their body that are consistent with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they should also do such wonderful acts that would be expected from the avatar. Prabhupada describes in the purport that there are two aims of the Krishna consciousness movement. The first aim is to encourage people to understand that the highest philosophy that is there in our Shastras is the philosophy to love God. And to love God, we have to understand that God is a supreme person. And he exhibits that through his wonderful avatars and through the personal exchanges he does with his devotees. It is not possible to love something that's abstract, to love something that is just light without form. But the Lord, when he appears in these personal forms, he exchanges wonderful services from his devotees. And that helps us develop a relationship. And through this particular Krishna consciousness movement, Srila Prabhupada emphasizes to establish this principle of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and also encourages us to share this knowledge with other people. So that was the first aim that he describes. Srila Prabhupada described the second aim of the Krishna consciousness movement is to annihilate these false avatars that are there in current society. So you'll see that oftentimes you'll hear in the news that there are so many so-called avatars. Some of them are in jail. Some of them are hiding in imaginary countries. And these personalities, they have no shastric basis. They have no external features that would be consistent with avatar, but just because they want to fool the general population, they may show some sort of magic and may attract the innocent minds of the people. But the way the Krishna consciousness movement helps, to destroy this existence of the avatars is by destroying the ignorance. So such people or such godmen, they feed on the ignorance of the people, people who are naive and they do not understand who really God is. But when through Krishna consciousness movement, we spread the books of Srila Prabhupada, we spread this knowledge that Srila Prabhupada has given, we enlighten people in general about what real religion is. And who really God is, and what should be the attributes of God, what should be the attributes of Bhagavan. And by doing this, we annihilate the existence of these false avatars. These are the two aims of Krishna consciousness movement that Srila Prabhupada recommends in this verse. In the last part of the purport, Srila Prabhupada describes that even Hiranyakashipu, in this particular Leela, he tried to establish himself as God, as all-powerful, as almighty. But despite him, his teachers, and in so many other ways trying to enforce this philosophy that he is God upon Sri Prahlad Maharaj, a devotee. Prahlad Maharaj never succumbed to this philosophy. He, despite his teachers telling him, his friends telling him, his own father telling him, he was convinced by the knowledge he had received from his guru and from what he had heard from the Shastras. And he always reminded Hiranyakashipu that actually that the original Supreme Personality of Godhead is Vishnu, and you should take shelter of him. So in this wonderful way, Srila Prabhupada has emphasized the meaning of the avatar, the reason the avatar comes, and how we can also participate in this Leela by spreading this Krishna consciousness movement and establishing the true meaning of avatar. Text 43 to 44, Sri Narad Muni goes on to describe, because he's still summarizing now this whole Leela, and he goes on to describe the wonderful attributes that has been discussed of the devotee Prahlad Maharaj. So three things have been described. The first thing is his staunch devotional service. So if you recall this whole episode when it began, there was a question raised that how a 5-year-old boy became such a wonderful devotee. Sometimes we may ask ourselves, how do I become an advanced devotee? How do I become a pure devotee? But we can see from follow the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj, and the answer, goes back again in time. And Shinad Muni describes that when Prahlad Maharaj was in the womb of his mother, he very carefully and attentively heard from me the glories of Supreme Personality of Godhead. So his first attribute that Narad Muni is summarizing is staunch devotional service, and specifically referring to Shravanam, the quality of hearing that we do. Because oftentimes we hear so many lectures, we read so many books, but we may not have that much enthusiasm, or that we may not be paying so much attention to it, because sometimes in this honestly in this material world and this busy life, we're trying to multitask so many things. But when we try to attentively hear, and I'm speaking for myself as well, but if we can try to attentively hear, sometimes take notes, note down the important points that we can truly reflect on, that will begin us in this path of achieving pure devotional service. And that we learn from Sri Prahlad Maharaj. Next thing, what Prahlad Maharaj did after hearing attentively is he assimilated this perfect knowledge. So he delved on this knowledge that was given by Narad Muni, and he took it to his heart. So not just hearing from one ear, taking out from another, and not just processing in the brain as a mental exercise, but this knowledge that he achieved from his guru, he reflected on this knowledge until it churned his heart and caused the transformation of his heart. Even though being born in a demoniac family, he was turned into a pure devotee. The third thing Narad Muni's qualities described about Prahlad Maharaj is, after hearing attentively with Shravanam and assimilating this perfect knowledge, he was able to perform perfect detachment from material contamination. So not only did he hear, not only did he assimilate the knowledge, but he also executed that in practical life. He had complete faith in the supremacy of the Lord Nrsingadev, and he had lost complete fear from all the attributes that all the situations that Hiranyakashipu was putting him under, and he performed perfect detachment from that material contamination. There is a concept about that I heard recently about Gyan and Vigyan. So Gyan is something that when we hear knowledge and when we acquire something, we know something theoretically. But sometimes when we're faced with some real life situations, we're not able to execute those that knowledge properly. But for that, we need Vigyan. So Vigyan is when you have transformation, you have practical realization of that knowledge. And that is why oftentimes when we meet devotees, we may ask them to share some of their practical realizations, because practical realization is something that is really embedded into their heart and that really practically helps them to practice Krishna consciousness in the daily life. These are the wonderful attributes Sri Narad Muni describes about Prahlad Maharaj from this Leela. In text 45, he goes on to describe that this wonderful description is related to Bhagavad Dharma. It is not related to Kaitav Dharma or cheating Dharma. It's not about being powerful, being wealthy, but it's about how we surrender ourselves into the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And these narrations, which deal with these principles, their actual transcendence is properly described. These kind of narrations are the ones that will deliver us from this material contamination that we have. The other thing Srila describes here is that we should first learn this Bhagavad Dharma and then preach to other people. So our duty is first to hear this katha and assimilate it, try to realize the practical points from it, what we can apply to our lives. And once we have understood it, then to share it with other people. Now, in text 46 to 47 is described the falashruti of this Leela of killing of Hiranyakashipu. That one who hears and chants this narration about the omnipotence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu is certainly liberated from material bondage without fail. That anybody who discusses the activities of Supreme Personality of Godhead surely reaches the spiritual world where there is no anxiety. I was listening to a wonderful katha by His Holiness Sri Radha Govind Maharaj, and the katha title was Grihast Dharma, about the duties of a devotee in the Grihast ashram. And Maharaj very eloquently describes so many different aspects of Grihast Dharma, the challenges that are faced. But one key point that I understood from listening to that talk was that he said that as Grihastas, because we are so much engaged with the material energy, with some people with different kind of consciousness, our firm, our practice should firmly be fixed in hearing attentively about the glories of Lord. So if we hear attentively about glories of the Lord and keep that as our anchor in our grihast life, that will save us from all the different kinds of contamination that we are subjected to in our day-to-day dealings with the material energy and the people with material consciousness. So we should be very eager and attentive in hearing about Krishna Katha. And Maharaj is a very funny example that oftentimes people will say, "Oh, but I don't have time." This is very. I realize this is very important. I realize that hearing about Ram Katha and Narsingh Katha is so nice, but what to do? I'm so fallen. I'm so stuck in this material world, and so much. I have so much trapped in Maya. I'm bound in this net of Maya. Maharaj says that even if you're bound in the net of Maya, trap of Maya, just pick up that net and run towards a devotee with all your net and problems and just sit down and listen. So that when you listen from a devotee, the devotee will be able to cut that net, remove the entanglement or the disillusionment that you have, the illusionment that you have, and help you liberate from this situation. The only way we can do that is hearing or shravanam from a pure devotee of the Lord. In text 48 to 49, and now Yudhishthir Maharaj, when Narad Muni is describing the story to Yudhishthir Maharaj, he realizes that maybe Yudhishthir Maharaj is feeling that since Prahlad Maharaj, such a pure and elevated devotee, and Narsingadev appeared before in front of him, that Yudhishthir Maharaj may be feeling, I'm not that fortunate. So he's trying to address that query. So it's wonderful to see how devotees react when they hear about other devotees' glorification. We may sometimes hear and think, oh, he's so the devotee that is talked about in this katha is so pure, but I'm not so pure. How is it applicable to me, or how will this happen with me? Sometimes devotees may feel envious. Oh, why did Nrsimhadev appear in front of only Prahlad Maharaj? Why not in front of me? And sometimes the right mood that should be there is depicted by Yudhishthir Maharaj, and that addressed by Narad Muni. When Yudhishthir Maharaj heard this katha and this wonderful situation of Sri Prahlad Maharaj, he felt so humble, and he felt like, oh, I wish I should be in this position that I can also constantly remember Lord Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so that one day even I can have his association. So this is the humble position that's glorified by Sri Narad Muni of Yudhishthira Maharaj and the Pandavas. Um, One nice point I'd heard from Amarendra Prabhu, that oftentimes devotees sometimes think that, oh, I'm so fallen, I'm so unqualified. So sometimes if we feel like that, then we may not want to do any particular service, because we may say, oh, I'm not qualified for this service, I'm too fallen. And but the real mood that a devotee should have is, although he should feel that he is unqualified for something, that he should still have that enthusiasm, that in order to please my senior Vaishnavas, in order to please my Guru and Guru Parampara, even though I'm unfallen, I will make this attempt based on their mercy, their kripa, to execute this particular devotional service that has been assigned to me. So we don't take that credit for it, but we also don't claim the ability to do that particular task. We just pray humbly for the ability to be provided by Krishna through the Guru Parampara, so we can serve him wonderfully. So this mood of humility is depicted by Yudhishthira Maharaj. Narad Muni goes on to say that actually, that Yudhishthira Maharaj, you are all more fortunate than most of the saints and devotional seekers, because most people in this world, they don't realize that the source of this impersonal Brahman is a personality, and that living personality is Sri Krishna himself, who's right now present in this sabha, in this court, as your dear friend. And so very few people are able to realize that he, Supreme Lord, is a person. But even among those people, there are very few who interact with this Supreme Person, sometimes as a friend, sometimes as a servant, sometimes being rebuked by him as a teacher. And you are enjoying so many wonderful, loving exchanges with the Supreme Person, that you are actually most fortunate, Sri Yudhishthira Maharaj. This is the conclusion of Narad Muni, that he is worshipable, yet he acts as your servant and sometimes as your spiritual master. In the last verse for the day, text 50, Narad Muni goes on to describe that even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva could not properly describe the truth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Um, so in the end, he prays that may the Lord, who is always a protector of devotees, be pleased with us. So, in this way, he briefly introduces to us the mention of Lord Shiva, and how, although Lord Brahma could not properly understand, but we know Lord Shiva truly understands the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And with this greatness, um, we'll hear the next story that's going to begin about the wonderful act about how Lord Shiva gets the name Tripurari, and the wonderful story that follows, and how he, as a perfect devotee, is able to act as an empowered servant of Krishna and achieve wonderful tasks for the pleasure of the Lord. So with this, we'll conclude our discussion today, and we have seen how Narad Muni wonderfully ends this beautiful Leela, one of the longest Leelas in Srimad Bhagavatam, and gives us the conclusion, the Falashruti, and in the end glorifies the Pandavas, the Vaishnavas. Hare Krishna. Thank you, dear devotees. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrind ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna to all dear devotees.